You probably know creatine, right? That stuff you see everywhere in the gym. Athletes really seem to swear by it for muscle, for performance.
Mm.
But what if I told you that this seemingly simple compound has this surprisingly rich history
Hmm.
and like really far-reaching implications for your brain, even your heart, your whole metabolism?
It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
And yet today we're doing a deep dive into exactly that creatine. We'll explore its journey, from just a scientific curiosity way back when to what some see as a modern health powerhouse.
Okay.
We'll really unpack its role in your body's energy system, look at the latest research, see where it's genuinely useful, and also where the science is still, figuring things out.
Right. So our mission here is to cut through the noise, maybe debunk some of those persistent myths you hear,
Exactly.
and just give you the really important bits, the key knowledge about creatine, so you can feel properly informed. Okay, let's get into it.
Sounds good.
Let's start with the absolute basics then. What is creatine? I mean, it's not something cooked up in a lab, is it?
No, not at all. It's actually a naturally occurring compound. Your body makes it, primarily in the liver.
The liver, okay.
Yeah, but your kidneys and pancreas chip in too. It synthesizes it from amino acids.
So our bodies are making it, but we also get it from food, right?
We do, and interestingly, it's found almost exclusively in animal-based foods.
Ah, okay. Like what?
Think red meat, beef, pork, seafood too, things like salmon, plaice, herring, tuna.
Right.
Just to give you an idea, like a 4-ounce piece of salmon,
Huh?
maybe up to half a gram of creatine. A pound of raw beef or salmon could have somewhere between 2 and maybe 4.5 grams.
Okay, so it's natural, we eat it. But where does the magic happen? How does it work, especially for those, quick bursts of energy, like sprinting or lifting something heavy?
Yeah, that's the core of it.
Yeah.
We all know ATP is like the body's instant energy money, right? What's amazing is how fast creatine helps remake that ATP. During those really intense moments, your need for ATP can shoot up like over 1,000 times compared to just resting.
1,000 times.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And without a super efficient way to regenerate that ATP fast, any kind of high-intensity effort would basically fizzle out after just a few seconds.
Okay, so this is where creatine steps in. How does it manage that quick replenishment?
It's pretty clever, actually. Creatine works with an enzyme, creatine kinase. It grabs a phosphate group from phosphocreatine PCR. That's the stored high-energy form of creatine.
Got it.
And it basically slaps that phosphate onto ADP, recycling it straight back into ATP. It's this super rapid system that fuels those explosive movements when ATP is vanishing.
So it's not really the fuel itself, but more like the express delivery system for the energy, making sure it gets there right on time.
That's a great way to put it. Exactly. Think of it like an energy buffer, maybe a shuttle. Your mitochondria, the cell's power plants, they're making energy.
Right.
Creatine acts like this incredibly efficient transport, getting that energy from the power plant to where it's desperately needed, like a muscle contracting really fast almost instantly. It bridges that gap before the slower energy systems can kick in.
Which explains why most of it's stored in muscle.
Precisely. About 95% is in skeletal muscle, and even more so in those fast-switch fibers, the ones used for power and speed.
So how did that actually, translate into gains for someone working out?
Well, by increasing those phosphocreatine stores in your muscles, you directly delay fatigue. You extend that window where you can perform at high intensity.
Okay.
That means you can do more total work in a training session, maybe squeeze out extra reps or maintain higher power output for longer. And that is a fundamental driver for long-term muscle growth and strength gains.
And there's solid research backing this up.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The research is pretty clear. When you combine creatine with resistance training, studies show, on average, something like 8% greater increases in maximal strength and maybe 14% greater increases in muscular endurance compared to training alone. That's pretty significant.
It really is a remarkable little shuttle system. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. The history here is actually fascinating. It goes way back, doesn't it?
It really does. We're talking 1832, almost 2 centuries ago.
Wow.
A French chemist, Michel-Eugène Chevreul, he was the first to isolate creatine from meat. That was really the very beginning, the start of creatine science.
And then someone else picked it up later.
Yeah, fast forward to 1847. A famous German chemist, Justus von Liebig. He confirmed Chevreul's finding, but he also noticed something crucial.
What was that?
He observed that active animals seem to have higher levels of creatine in their muscles. That was the first real clue, the first hint that creatine was somehow linked to physical activity.
Interesting. But understanding how it worked, that took longer.
Much longer. The big metabolic breakthrough didn't happen until 1927. That's when two different groups working independently, Eggleton and Fisk and Subarow, they discovered phosphocreatine, PCR.
Ah, the stored form we talked about.
Exactly. Discovering that high-energy storage form was key to understanding its role in metabolism.
But even then, how did they actually measure it in people's muscles?
Well, that was the next hurdle. For a while, they couldn't easily. The big enabling step came in the 1960s with a technological innovation.
Okay.
Two researchers, Jonas Bergstrom and Eric Holtman, they developed the muscle biopsy technique.
Ah, right. That's fun.
Maybe not fun for the participant, but revolutionary for the science. For the first time, scientists could directly take a tiny sample and measure creatine levels inside human muscle. That really opened the floodgates for all the modern supplementation studies we have now.
Makes sense. And weren't there rumors, like even before that, about athletes using it?
Yes, definitely. By the 1970s, there were whispers, kind of shrouded in Cold War secrecy, that Soviet Olympic athletes might have been using creatine strategically.
Behind the Iron Curtain.
Exactly. Sort of this anecdotal, real-world hint of its potential long before it hit the mainstream.
But the big public explosion, that was later.
The real ignition point was 1992. That year, Roger Harris, Eric Holtman again, and their colleagues published a landmark paper.
What did it show?
It demonstrated conclusively that taking creatine monohydrate orally actually increased the creatine stores within human muscles. That was the scientific proof that really kicked off the modern era of widespread research and use.
And the timing was perfect, wasn't it? Because that same year...
Right. Also in 1992, you had Olympic gold medalists, Linford Christie and Sally Gunnell, openly crediting creatine for helping their performance.
That must have blown it up.
Absolutely. It catapulted creatine into the public eye, into mainstream athletics. It's just a perfect example of how basic science, technology like the biopsy, and then real-world results all came together.
It's a great story. But even with all that history and science, there are still so many myths floating around about creatine, aren't there?
Oh, definitely. It's surprising how persistent some of them are.
Let's tackle a few. The big one first.
Bro.
People sometimes confuse it with steroids. Is creatine an anabolic steroid?
Absolutely. Unequivocally not. This is probably the most important misconception to clear up. Anabolic steroids are synthetic versions of testosterone.
Yeah.
They have a very specific chemical structure, that styrene ring, that makes them hormones.
Okay.
Creatine, completely different chemical structure. It's not a hormone. It's not a steroid. Not even close.
Good to clarify. What about the whole water retention thing? People worry about looking bloated.
Yeah, that's another really common one. And there's a grain of truth, but it's often misunderstood. Some studies do show a short-term increase in water, but it's primarily intracellular water.
Meaning inside the muscle cell.
Exactly. And that can actually be a good thing. Potentially an anabolic signal that helps stimulate muscle growth. More protein synthesis, less breakdown.
Ah, okay.
But over the longer term, many studies show it doesn't really change your total body water relative to your muscle mass. So the idea of significant widespread water retention or bloating, largely unsubstantiated for most people. If anything, muscles just look fuller.
What about causing dehydration or muscle cramps? You hear that sometimes.
Another myth that just doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Lots of research, both in labs and with athletes in the field, shows creatine does not increase the risk of dehydration or cramping.
Interesting.
In fact, some evidence even suggests it might help reduce cramping in some situations.
Okay, what about the hair loss connection? That seems to have popped up more recently.
Yeah, that one gained some traction. But again, when you look at the actual evidence, the studies measuring hormone levels, they just don't show that creatine supplementation increases testosterone or DHT, the hormone often linked to hair loss, or that it causes baldness. The data simply isn't there.
So zooming out then, after decades of research, hundreds of studies, what's the overall safety verdict?
It has an incredibly strong safety profile, possibly one of the best studied supplements out there. We're talking like over 680 peer-reviewed clinical trials since the 70s. And 95% of those use creatine monohydrate, the standard form. These studies involved, get this, over 12,800 people, all ages, from infants to the very elderly. Healthy people, people with various conditions,
Hmm.
doses up to 30 grams a day, sometimes for years, even up to 14 years in one study.
And the results.
Across all those trials,
Yeah.
no clinical adverse events directly linked to creatine were reported. Minor side effects were rare and no different than the placebo groups.
That's pretty compelling.
It is. And think about this. Researchers analyzed over 28 million adverse event reports submitted worldwide over 50 years. Creatine was mentioned in only about 0.00007% of them. That's minuscule, considering billions of doses are taken. It's generally recognized as safe GRAS by the FDA.
Okay, so it seems like it's passed the safety tests with flying colors.
It really has.
All right, given how safe and well understood it is for muscles, this is where things get really exciting, I think. The research is branching out, isn't it? Beyond the gym.
Absolutely. The emerging roles for creatine are fascinating. We're seeing potential benefits for brain health, mental health, cardiovascular function, maybe even glucose management. It's turning out to be quite versatile.
Let's dig into the brain stuff first. How does creatine help with cognition?
Well, just like muscle cells, your brain cells need a ton of energy. They have incredibly high ATP demands.
Right.
Creatine helps maintain those vital ATP levels in neurons. By supporting that fundamental energy supply, it can support cognitive function. Some researchers are even starting to call it a nootropic because of this.
Brain fuel, essentially. What specific cognitive benefits are studies showing?
Well, one big systematic review and meta-analysis found that adults taking creatine generally showed meaningful improvements in memory. They also processed information faster.
Interesting. Any specific groups that benefited more?
Yeah, what was really insightful from that review was that the benefits seemed particularly strong in older adults, specifically those aged 66 to 76.
Why might that be?
The thinking is that brain creatine levels might naturally decline as we age. So for older adults, supplementation might not just be a boost, but potentially help restore levels closer to where they were, which could have real implications for healthy aging.
But I remember seeing some other research that painted a slightly different picture, maybe more nuanced.
You're right, it's not always straightforward. Another recent meta-analysis found significant positive effects on things like memory and processing speed, but mainly in individuals who already had certain diseases, or in younger adults aged 18 to 60.
Okay.
Interestingly, that particular analysis didn't find a significant effect in healthy individuals over 60 or on overall cognitive function across the board.
So it highlights that the research is still evolving. It might depend on who you are, your age, your health status.
Precisely. It shows the complexity. It's not necessarily a magic bullet for everyone's brain, but for specific populations or situations, it seems quite promising. We still need more clarity on who benefits most and why.
What about conditions like Alzheimer's or dementia? Is there research there?
There's some preliminary work. A pilot study looked at patients aged 60 to 90 with Alzheimer's or dementia. They took 20 grams of creatine monohydrate daily.
High dose.
Yeah, a loading type dose. And they saw moderate improvements in things like working memory and executive function. The researchers suggested creatine might also be helping by reducing inflammation and oxidative stress in the brain, which are known factors in brain aging. But again, pilot study needs more follow-up.
Okay. Moving beyond just cognition, what about mental health? That's a huge area.
It is, and there's growing evidence here too, particularly regarding depression. Several studies suggest creatine monohydrate might help prevent or treat depression.
Really? How so?
Studies have shown improved mood in adults with treatment-resistant depression. These were patients who weren't responding well to standard antidepressants. Adding 3 to 5 grams of creatine per day for 4 weeks seemed to help.
That's significant.
Yeah, and another study found it improved depressive symptoms in adolescent girls who had major depressive disorder that was resistant to SSRIs. They took 4 grams a day for 8 weeks. There's also some research suggesting it might improve symptoms of PTSD.
Wow. Those are potentially really impactful findings. But weren't there some really important warnings or cautions with mental health conditions?
Yes, absolutely critical cautions. It's vital to highlight these. Creatine is strongly contraindicated, meaning it should not be used for bipolar disorder.
Why is that?
There's evidence suggesting it could actually trigger a manic episode in patients with bipolar disorder.
Okay, that's crucial to know.
Very crucial.
Yeah.
It also seems to offer no benefit for schizophrenia. And there's a broader point, too. Even in healthy brains, just loading up excessively might not be good. It could potentially shift metabolite concentrations in ways we don't really understand yet.
So it really underscores the need for personalized approaches and talking to a doctor.
Absolutely. Especially if you have any pre-existing mental health condition. This isn't something to experiment with lightly in those cases.
Got it. Okay, let's shift to the heart. Any benefits for cardiovascular health?
There's some promising research suggesting it might improve vascular health.
Hmm.
It seems to work through a few different mechanisms.
Like what?
It might increase the energy stores within the endothelial cells lining your blood vessels, improve how well their mitochondria work, reduce damaging reactive oxygen species, maybe even increase the density of tiny blood vessels.
Mm-hmm.
There's also evidence it could help lower levels of damaging lipids and reduce inflammation and homocysteine, both of which are linked to heart disease risk.
Interesting potential there. And what about blood sugar, glucose management, diabetes that affects so many people?
Yeah, this is another emerging area. Preliminary evidence suggests creatine, especially when you combine it with exercise, might help your muscle cells take up glucose more effectively,
Oh,
potentially by increasing the number of GLUT4 transporters on the muscle cell surface. Think of those like little doorways that open up to let glucose in. Some small studies involving people with type 2 diabetes found that taking creatine alongside exercise improved their glycemic control and lowered their HbA1c, which is a marker of long-term blood sugar levels.
that sounds promising.
It is promising, but
Yeah.
but these were small, short-term studies. We really need larger, longer trials before we can make any firm clinical recommendations for diabetes management.
Right. So intriguing, but handle with caution for now.
Exactly. For type 1 diabetes, the research is even more limited. It might offer some benefits for muscle mass and performance, which can be concerns in type 1, but again, very early days.
And the bottom line, especially with chronic conditions,
Always talk to your healthcare provider before starting creatine if you have something like diabetes or any other chronic condition.
makes sense. One last area, immune function.
Yeah, there's some evidence creatine can boost the function of certain immune cells, specifically neutrophils, by giving them more ATP energy. However, there's a potential downside too. In certain inflammatory conditions, like asthma in animal models, inappropriate creatine supplementation seemed to actually worsen inflammation. So it's not a simple boost your immune system story. Context really matters.
It seems like context matters for a lot of these emerging areas.
Really does.
Okay, let's get practical then. If someone is considering creatine, maybe for muscle performance initially, what's the typical dosing strategy?
The classic approach, especially for muscle performance, often involves a loading phase. That's typically around 0.3 grams per kilogram of your body weight, taken daily for about 5 to 7 days.
So for an average person, maybe 20 grams a day, split up.
Yeah, something like that, often split into smaller doses throughout the day. Then, after that loading week, you drop down to a maintenance dose, which is much smaller, maybe 0.03 grams per kilogram per day, usually for 4 to 6 weeks, or even ongoing.
Is that loading phase absolutely necessary?
That's a good question. It's not strictly required to eventually reach full muscle saturation. It just gets you there much faster, usually within about a week. Without loading, just taking the maintenance dose from the start, it might take more like 3 to 4 weeks to fully saturate your muscles. So loading just speeds up the initial process.
Gotcha. Now, the supplement aisle can be confusing. So many different forms of creatine, monohydrate, HCl, others. What's the deal?
It can definitely be confusing. But let me be really clear here. Creatine monohydrate, often written as a CRM, is absolutely the gold standard.
Why is that?
It's the form used in the vast majority of studies, like 95% of them. It's proven effective time and time again. It's also the most cost-effective. And importantly, your gut absorbs it incredibly well, close to 100%.
Okay, so monohydrate is king. What about creatine HCl or hydrochloride? You see that marketed a lot, often claiming it's better absorbed or needs lower doses.
Yeah, those are the claims. HCl is chemically more soluble in water. That's true. But the claims about better absorption, needing lower doses, causing less bloating, they haven't really been backed up by solid head-to-head research comparing it directly to monohydrate.
So the science doesn't support the height.
Largely, no. Studies that have compared them haven't shown HCl to be superior for improving strength or performance. And it's usually much more expensive.
So maybe an option only if someone really struggles with monohydrate digestion.
Perhaps. For that very small percentage of people who experience significant stomach upset with monohydrate, HCl might be a tolerable, albeit pricier, alternative. But for almost everyone else, monohydrate is the way to go. Other forms, like creatine ethyl ester, have pretty much failed to show any consistent benefits over monohydrate either.
Stick with the classic then. Let's quickly revisit dietary sources. We said animal foods. Any particularly rich ones we should know about? And does cooking affect it?
Good points, yes. Almost exclusively animal foods. The richest dietary sources are red meats like beef and pork and fatty fish like herring, salmon, tuna.
Right.
A pound of raw beef or salmon might give you around 2 to 4.5 grams. And yes, cooking can degrade some of the creatine, so less processed sources might retain a bit more, but supplementation is generally the most practical way to reach those higher performance-enhancing levels.
And this is really important for vegetarians and vegans, right?
Absolutely crucial point. Because plant-based foods essentially contain zero creatine, vegetarians and vegans naturally have much lower baseline levels in their muscles,
Which means?
which means they often show a more significant and beneficial response when they do supplement with creatine, both for physical performance and potentially for those cognitive benefits we discussed. It can be a particularly valuable tool for them.
That's really good to know. Okay, finally, safety again. We know it's generally safe, but any specific side effects people might notice, even if mild? And who absolutely needs to be cautious?
Right. For most healthy folks, it's very well tolerated.
Yeah.
If side effects occur, they're usually mild and rare. Maybe some stomach upset, diarrhea, headache. Some people mention things like fatigue or nausea, but it's often hard to distinguish from placebo.
What about weight gain?
If people experience weight gain, it's typically from an increase in lean body mass, muscle tissue, which is usually the goal anyway. It's not usually significant water bloat.
Okay, and the cautions. Who needs to talk to a doctor first?
Definitely consult a healthcare provider if you are pregnant or breastfeeding. There's less research there. Also crucial if you have pre-existing kidney disease or Parkinson's disease. And as we stressed earlier, bipolar disorder is a definite contraindication.
So pre-existing conditions are key.
Absolutely. While generally safe, there have been extremely rare reports of liver or kidney issues, but those almost always involve combining creatine with other substances or taking massive doses for extended periods. A healthcare provider can help you figure out if it's right for you, the proper dose, and monitor things.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, it's clear creatine is way more than just a muscle supplement for athletes, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's this fundamental energy shuttle deep within our biology. Its history is fascinating, and now we're seeing its potential spread into brain health, maybe heart health, glucose metabolism. It keeps surprising us.
It really does.
And when you think about how creatine seems to work best by amplifying the body's own positive responses, especially to things like exercise, it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Wonder what?
Well, what other synergistic applications might we uncover? Combining creatine with other stimuli, maybe across different stages of life. What new ways could we use this remarkable compound to optimize health and performance as we continue to learn more? It really poses an interesting question for the future.